What's up, YouTube? Coming at you live tonight at 8:58 p.m. here on Sunday. It is the weekly lawn and garden show. What's up, YouTube? Man, am I glad to be here. Super glad to be here. I think we got everything going on for a big, fun, wide open, wild show tonight. If you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. So, big thank you to everybody for tuning in. I just wanted to say, one, how much I appreciate everybody being here, and two, thank you for tuning in. So, now that we've got everything started here, we got it all going on, the fun, backward, front ways, all kinds of sort of stuff. We're going to move on to that part of the show where we're doing the roll call. Man, look at all that focus, not focus we got going on in there. Man, that camera is something else. Can everybody hear me okay? Can everybody hear me? Just curious if anybody can hear me. If you can hear me, type on over in the chat and be like, yeah, what's up? I can hear you. Blah, 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 blah. How'd you like the intro music? I was feeling a little froggy today, and I said, I'm going to see if I can make that work somehow, some way with the way this goes. YouTube has kind of changed up the way they do these live streams now, so bear with me. I am trying to figure out how exactly this works because just the dashboard itself looks totally different. So, just making sure. All right, we got yeses. Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. For those of you who don't know, I turned 33 over the weekend, and man, do I feel awesome to be 33 years old. I'm pumped, I'm older, I'm balder, I'm fatter, and I'm way less cool than I used to be. So, you take it all in stride. I'm still cool to my kids. My wife likes me sometimes, but, I'm doing the best I can. That's what I always say. All right. I think we got all of that out of the way. So, we're going to move into that part of the show that we call the roll call. We're going to jump on over here and say what's up to everybody I saw. We got action going on in the chat super early today. And numero uno. Can anybody guess who was number one? It was Lushy at Lush Lawns. My man up there in Boston with the steamers and his lobsters watching his Patriots and his system quarterback, Tom Brady. That was as good as I could get, Lushy. I'm so sorry, Aaron. I'm really sorry. But I had to do it. With number two, we had one of my favorite attorneys tuning in, Mr. Lambert himself, all the way down there in the deep, deep south, bordering the water. John Teague was in here just taking a little cheap shot at how awesome my Vols are. And for those of you that aren't aware, my University of Tennessee Volunteers are doing fantastic this year. Not in the slightest. It just was so painful to watch. The problem is that I get so excited watching the games that I get into this false sense of security that this is going to be the game where we begin to turn things around. And it just doesn't happen that way. And a heartbreaking overtime loss when clearly we outplayed the opponent. I digress. We're moving on. John Teague, glad you're here. Shane Brady, the hardest working man in lawn care. We got Brett Schmidt tuning in. Glad you're here, Brett. Who else did we have here? A's Lawn and Landscaping. Mr. Aiden himself is over here on fire in the chat. I don't know if he's on fire. What's up, Aiden? I'm glad you're here, buddy. RBL Jackson's here and on time. That's what I'm talking about. Kevin McCarthy's here. Welcome to the show, sir. Chris Gibson, got to meet him last week. We had a good time over there at his house in South Carolina before the hurricane ripped through. We took a little trip, my wife and I, to Charleston, South Carolina, and on the way back, we met up with Mr. Gibby, took a look at his sprigging project. We had a good time over there. Glad you're here, Gibby. The Fishing Professor, my favorite in the chat tonight, because boy, what would I rather be doing right now? And it's learning from the Fishing Professor. That's what I'm talking about. Mr. Jasmine, glad you're here. Jonathan Brothers, Dennis Page. I promise I want to go to Utah one day. I will. I got to find the time. C.D. Andrews in the yes. New phone. Who this? The cough is still here. The cough is still here. I go to the doctor in 4 days. In 4 days. They told me to let it see if it passed. The cough is not passed. I'm going in 4 days. I promise I do not have tuberculosis. Brian Jones, thank you for the happy birthday. Richard Nettles, thank you for tuning in. Matt Kosinski's in the house. That's what I'm talking about. Friday the 13th, the big J, the big A, the big Connor. And if you joined, it would be the Matley crew. Be there, Salt Lake City 2019. Man, I wish I could go. I really wish I could. Did you hear that Tennessee football will now be mandatory instead of volunteer? No, I did not hear that, and that's bizarre. I wonder where that's coming from. Cole Hurley's here. Benjamin ZBT VW 1972. That's an old bug. Jeremy Swatkins bringing them down, kicking down doors, busting through, figuring out what's going on. DSPO, Mark Taylor, Nathan Tibbetts. Can't say I recognize your name, Nathan Tibbetts, at least at the chat side. Cheers to you, good sir. Southern Lawn Guys here. Thank you for the happy birthday. Velvet Hammer, dropping the hammer. Tony Tillman, Tom's Turf Care, Juan Jarquin. More Jonathan Brothers, party time, he said. Brandon Reinschmidt, all the way over in North Carolina. Ben Worthman, B-Rug. David with Wyoming in the house. My goodness, we got all kinds of stuff going in here. So, anyway, I will get everybody a little bit, if this is your first time tuning in, let me tell you a little bit how this works. This is a viewer-dictated show. It is a question and answer open format. You ask questions, I provide answers. I answer questions to the best of my ability. My background is turf grass management. I understand turf and can answer questions most accurately when involving turf. Outside of turf, my knowledge and expertise begins to take a pretty steep dive. I can talk a little bit about some annuals, some perennials, some woody plants, but we know here in the lawn care community, we want to talk about that grass. You know what I'm saying? All right, so if you would like to go ahead and get your questions out into the chat room, I will begin answering them to the best of my ability. And I think we've already got some in here, so let's talk about this a little bit. B-Ruck first said, sprinkle some X-Starts on my Frosted Flakes. Helps me get started in the morning. That's good to hear. Don't overdo it. Too much phosphorus can be a bad thing. So test your soil blood there first, B-Ruck, before you go ham on the X-Start. Tom's Turf Care says, growing in bent grass and sand peat mix 3 weeks in. Some of grass leaf tips are yellowing. Any suggestions? Tom, if I had to guess, anthracnose is still kind of lingering, and depending on where you are, if I remember correctly, you're pretty far up in the northeast. You could be moving back into that period of, Sean, what are we doing? My lungs are fine. We could be moving into that period where you're going to see a resurgence of brown patch, because I know at least here where I am in the transition zone, we're having a really sharp temperature increase right now. We're going to be mid-90s this week, so where typically we would almost be done with brown patch just because of the cooler nighttime temperatures, this heat wave we're having through actually is putting Pythium back into play. So depending on what your day and nighttime temperatures, it could be Pythium coming back into play in your world too. Take care of the basics. Make sure you're applying, to grow in. So your nutrient demand needs to be there and available to the plant. Foliar applications are going to be ideal here. Make sure they're balanced between your nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Yellowing could be a sign of chlorotic turf. I don't know if you know what the pH is, so you may be being in sand, you could be deficient iron manganese world. Also with yellow tips, you could be K deficient as well. So make sure you have your fertility bases covered. If you do have your fertility bases covered, then it's time to start looking at external reasonings. And where I would begin would probably be disease, especially since it is a grow-in. Just be careful with it. Be careful. Be diligent. Let's see if I get that camera to focus a little bit better there. All right, man, that was a great question there. Thanks, Tom. I actually really enjoyed answering that. Brian Morales says, Matt, I'm about to go out on my own and start my own thing. Any tips and wisdom? Yes, Brian, let me talk about this because I've been talking to a lot of lawn applicators here lately, and I want to be extremely transparent of what it's like to get into the furt and squirt business. First and foremost is get ready, because unlike other businesses where there's a start and an end, well, I take that back. There's really, if you own your own business, there is no start and end. The same thing, I don't know, Brian, if you've ever had your own company before, but get ready, because you will lose the boundary between what is working hours and non-working hours, where your day is just a balance of how much you can get done in a possible day. Daylight hours no longer matter, because that's just the time that you get to be out on the yards. What you're going to find is that you will have an equal amount of work out off the yards as you will on the yards. Growing grass after a certain point is going to be the easiest part of your job. From that point, it's going to be, how quickly can you get someone hired to be your office staff? A lot of people have been asking me about it right now. What should be my first hire? My very first hire. I've got 200 accounts. I've got 300 accounts, and I need my first hire. If your goal is to scale your business and to grow it and be one of those lawn care guys that has, 3, 4, 5 trucks on the road, in order to scale to that, you have to have the systems in place to handle your marketing efforts and your support after the sale efforts. Your number one first hire should be office staff when you can hire someone. Also, be ready, because you're going to have to make adjustments physically. And I'm not just saying like exercise to stay in shape in that way, but what you'll notice is that you'll have to adjust your entire lifestyle around your physical limitations to treating lawns. So, for instance, during the peak of summer, what I would have to do is I would eat 80 to 85% of my calories before I went to bed. So that way, while I was out the next day, I wasn't starving, and I had the energy to keep going, but I wasn't forced to eat anything other than like a handful of nuts or something. The reason being is that if I started putting on too many calories during the heat of the day, it would begin to slow me down and could affect my spray pattern throughout the course of the day. So I had to make that adjustment of cramming as much food into my gullet as possible at night to make sure I could get through the next day. Also, water, I cannot preach it enough. I mean, it's going to be gallons and gallons and gallons of water a day. All I'm saying is that it can be a miserable lifestyle to someone from the outside looking in. Once you're in it and you see the fruits of your labor, there's nothing else you'll ever want to do. So it's extremely rewarding. Just remember, it is extremely difficult. It is not exactly a glamorous lifestyle. All right, John Cruz says, can aerate dry out grass seed if applied over top of seed? I heard that somewhere. John, I don't know if that specifically can happen. It could dry out potentially newly germinated seed. So, but that would be assuming that it's just a perfect timing thing because, okay, so aerate has potassium hydroxide in it, and potassium hydroxide is very caustic. It's a pH of 14, and you mix it with water, and it's an exothermic reaction. It gets really hot, right? And it's a salt, and it's extremely high on the salt index plus caustic. So when you put that onto plant foliage, it can dehydrate it at a high enough rate. At the rates that are going down in something like aerate, is the likelihood of that happening? Probably not. But don't violate the label. If you do violate the label, you begin to increase the probability of drying out, I don't know if you'd actually dry out grass seed, but drying out the turf grass, or they call it desiccating it, increases exponentially the higher the rate you run. All right, tough to be a Vols fan, man. You have no idea. No idea what is going on. The lawn stripes, I don't need it. Thank you, sir. Southern Lawn Guy, thank you, sir. And Sean Smith, my lungs are fine. I'm healthy as a horse. I did, man. I had a great time in Charleston. I was really impressed with it. It was my first time there, and I enjoyed it. And I love your Swarovski scope. That's what I'm talking about. Lushy! Damn it. Don't do that. Don't start with me. I will grab you by your face. I'm not going to grab you by your face. I don't know why I said that. That was a horrible thing to say. Thanks, Kenny Cooper. Yeah, man, I am glad to be back. All right, let's see if we got any more questions here. I'm going to skip down a little bit. If I miss your question, feel free to ask again. I'm only human, and I do make mistakes, and sometimes I do make accidents of skipping over questions. I live in Pennsylvania. Is converting my turf-type tall fescue to Zenith Zoysia a smart move? Michael Miller, this is what you have to ask yourself. Are you okay with having dormant grass 4 to 5 months a year? If you're okay with that, then absolutely you can. Is Zenith the best choice? I don't know. It may be good in terms of cold tolerance. Typically the ones that I see that do just great with cold tolerance is just the old standard tried and true Meyer Z52 Zoysia. That stuff can really just tolerate the world. So, and if Zenith is a hybrid of that or something like that, or it's cold tolerant, yeah, that's fine. So if you're okay with that long of a period of dormant grass, then by all means, yeah, of course you can have a Zenith Zoysia lawn in Pennsylvania. What are your thoughts on rhizomatous tall fescue? I'm thinking of seeding RTF. Mike, you haven't been around here long because I absolutely love rhizomatous tall fescue. Now, do not let it fool you into thinking that it is going to self-repair. It's not. Will a lighter seeding rate at time of establishment still give you a high-quality lawn? Yes. Does it flush out in the spring and fill up any kind of, little nooks and crannies of bare areas? Yes. But does it self-repair? No. So just go in with the right expectations. It's not magic, but it is a nice addition. And typically the genetics with the RTFs are really good in terms of disease resistance and overall color as well. So that's good. Bird Dog's been battling his Zoysia all season. Looks very sick. Used everything I can think of. Is Zoysia more susceptible to fungus than St. Augustine grass? I just keep getting patches dying on me. I sprayed for bugs too. It can be more susceptible to disease than St. Augustine. If you keep dealing with that many issues, I'm curious, is it dying and going straight to the ground? Or is it just a patch dying where it looks sick and it just won't grow in that patch? If I had to guess, if you keep continuing to run into that many issues and you don't see anything obvious like sod webworms, for instance, or armyworms, and if it's not easily identifiable disease, then if chances are it could be nematodes. Nematodes and Zoysia grass seem to go hand in hand. You may want to send a sample off to be tested for nematodes. And if that is the case, time to look at a nematicide. A grappa a day will keep the doctor away. Our temps are ridiculous still. Mid-90s the next couple of weeks. Too early for perennial ryegrass overseed. I was going to wait till 80s and 60s consistently. John Teague, yes and no. The temperatures are ridiculous. Is it too early? No, if you can keep the water up. If you don't want to keep the water up, then yeah, wait. But I will tell you this, typically, like when I was in Augusta, Georgia, hotter there than here in Knoxville, the last week of August, everybody had their perennial ryegrass down. Occasionally, some people would stretch that out into October, but into August, everybody's throwing out perennial ryegrass, getting ready for the Masters the next year. So, high temperature does not affect germination. High temperature makes it harder to keep the seed bed moist enough to germinate. But hotter temperatures actually germinate seed faster. How about that? What is your favorite turf-type tall fescue blend? I don't use any store-bought turf-type tall fescue blends. I would always link up with a distributor that would approach a grower in Oregon and have ones custom-made for our area. The last one I used was made for a company called Dickens Turf here in Knoxville. They distributed it, and it all came from Mountain View Seeds. So if you're looking for a turf-type tall fescue blend, the rhizomatous tall fescues developed by Mountain View Seeds are my favorite that I have used. Question, What effect will buried landscape timbers have on grass? Some are just at the surface, others are 8 inches to 12 inches under the surface. Perhaps eventual low spots? What about soil fertility, grass health? Okay, I don't know are these creosote treated wood timbers for preservation purposes? Are they treated with arsenic? Or are they just natural wood timbers you've got out there? If it is arsenic, you're putting arsenic into the groundwater, not exactly ideal, but the beautiful thing about grass is that grass is actually a purifier in the sense that the arsenic will grow into the leaves. Now, if you harvest those leaves and discard them, at a landfill or something like that, you move them off site. If you do not collect your grass clippings, then they will continually recycle back into the ground. There we go. I brought my water. Okay. Chances are with that, what you are going to have to deal with most is going to be the composting process of breaking down those timbers. So the wood is going to consume, it's going to be so high in carbon and so low in nitrogen, the carbon to nitrogen ratio is going to be really off. So as it breaks down, it's going to require a lot of nitrogen to get that to break down. So what will happen is that a lot of times your turf will become extremely chlorotic in the beginning, and then as the composting does take place, any of the root system that is deep enough to be able to touch it will begin to burn just due to the heat generated from the composting process, and you'll lose your turf there. I've seen it a lot where people have cleared off wooded areas, and just kind of fly distributed their wood chips. And they kind of, worked it into the ground and then seeded on top of it. And every summer, that is the first yard to completely burn up. And the reason why is because all those wood chips that were distributed were composting. And soil temperatures would be like 120 degrees Fahrenheit when your ambient air temperature was like 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Hard to grow grass in that kind of environment. Matt, what can you discuss when to use surfactants with fungicides, which surfactant with which fungicides? Okay, so I would go ahead and make it the blanket statement, all fungicides you will want to use a surfactant, because even if it's a contact fungicide, so we're talking like mancozeb or chlorothalonil, then you want that distribution that breaking up the surface tension of water will provide, because you'll get a more evenly distributed coating across the surface with the fungicide. If it's a systemic product, even though it may need to translocate through to the plants, if you distribute the concentrated material across the leaf surface, those are more sites of entry for the fungicide. So I'm going to make a blanket statement, all fungicides you will want to run with a surfactant. Kenny Cooper wants to know which herbicide would be best for cool season mix of rye blue and a lot of bent grass. Want to get rid of clover, creeping Charlie, and wild ivy. Kenny Cooper, I did a video on broadleaf weed controls, and particularly it specifically talked actually about clover, creeping Charlie, and wild violet. And I will tell you that fluroxapyr and a fluroxapyr containing herbicide is what you're looking for. So something like Escalade 2 would be a good choice. There's a product by Helena called Battleship 3. That's a good product. All of those would work exceptionally well because they all contain fluroxapyr. Jonathan Brothers says, Matt, I have a bunch of worm casting mounds in my Alabama Bermuda lawn, making it bumpy. Do you think a power rake would smooth out in the spring, or any better ideas? Like to drop mowing height to 1 inch. Yeah, would it? It's hard to say. Yes, probably, but I don't think it would be the same as like sand capping it. So probably what I would do, in lieu of using a power rake, I would try and use an actual verticutter and verticut it multiple directions, 2, 3, maybe 4 directions. I think 3 to 4 directions minimum, actually. Maybe somewhere 3 to 8 passes with your verticutter. And you don't have to do that all at one time. I mean, you may do like 2 one week, and then 2 the next week, then 2 the next week, then 2 the next week. So you get like a total of 8. That may be enough distribution of the worm castings to get it to even out. That's probably my best guess. Other than sand capping would be ideal. Michael Miller says, can I grow zoysia lawn in southeastern Pennsylvania? Yes, I believe I answered that already. Brandon Reinschmidt, I had a handful of lawns get Pythium this year. What would be your go-to curative app? Okay, so Segway is going to be a really good one, really expensive. Less, but still equally effective, is mefenoxam, also known as Subdue Max. It's gone generic now, and you can get mefenoxam 2AQ at a somewhat affordable rate. I think it's still something like $300 for a gallon, and I believe the use rate is like 1 ounce per 1,000. So, $100 an acre, something like that, is about your cost on that. Not too awful. But yes, mefenoxam does really well. One thing you may want to consider also is experimenting with phosphites. Remember, phosphites are not the same thing as phosphate or phosphorus. It is derived from phosphorus acid. However, the reaction process does not allow that phosphorus to be plant available. It actually provides potassium, because you can do a potassium phosphite reaction, which would be like potassium hydroxide reacted with phosphorus acid would give you a potassium phosphite. But that none of that phosphorus would be plant available. But it is unique in the sense that it is a fertility product that is shown to have a certain level of efficacy on controlling Pythium. So that may be something to look into in conjunction with your rotation applications of Segway and mefenoxam. Manny Chavez says, I'm in Fort Worth. When's a good time to apply Preem? I had a bad case of POA. Also, what are your thoughts on winter fertilizer? What do you recommend? And also have perennial rye. Okay, so if you are in Dallas-Fort Worth area, I'm assuming you have Bermuda grass. When is a good time to apply pre-emergent? Now. And I would highly recommend you go ahead and go with Indaziflam, also known as Spectacle Flow. Your DNA herbicides of prodiamine, pendimethalin, dithiopyr, when it comes to controlling POA in that kind of climate, for guys that are in the Northeast, you could get away with it a little better than you could in the South. Plus, POA in the South and dormant Bermuda grass, it just looks so much worse than it does in a cool season lawn. But I would look at Indaziflam, Spectacle Flow, and start your applications now, at least at minimum by the end of the month. You also have perennial rye. That's fine. Get your if you're doing perennial rye, you cannot apply Indaziflam on top of that. You would have to do something like Oxidizon or Ronstar with your perennial ryegrass. Sun99 says, can I mix rye with turf type tall fescue when I overseed? Yes, you can, as long as you don't live in the transition zone. If you live in the transition zone and you mix ryegrass with your turf type tall fescue when you overseed, you will be so mad at yourself because your lawns will check out so much faster. And it's not going to be like a complete checkout. It's going to check out to the point where all the perennial ryegrass is either going to be fried with gray leaf spot or brown patch or Pythium, or just not tolerate the heat and shut down and go dormant. And it'll be just evenly dispersed throughout your turf type tall fescue. And you're like, why is this happening? None of my neighbors are having this happen. But if you're somewhere like in Indiana, middle to northern Indiana, you could probably get away with it without any issue. Drew Bogart says, I'm seeing fungus problems in El Toro zoysia. Should I apply a fungicide or should I let the turf go dormant? Drew, how far away are you from going dormant? I personally would go ahead and apply fungicide because it's September 8th And if you have El Toro, I'm figuring you're somewhere, you've got to be south of me, and I'm in Knoxville, Tennessee. So I know I'm not going to be going dormant until November. So I got another 2 months. That's a lot of issues that can still take place in 2 months. I personally would spray it. Let's see here. Get that 2404 to spread yet? New stuff, old stuff, still won't spread. No response from Carbon Earth on my problems. RZR Nut, we are not having any issues with the new stuff. So if you have run into a problem, feel free to reach out to me. My email is mattm@carbonearth.co. I don't know if you're aware, and for those of you that aren't aware, this was a little bit of an issue we had where this was around May, early May. We were actually having a chemical reaction that was taking place when we would combine. So we import our nitrogen from Europe. And when we combine this product, which is a homogenized urea ammonium sulfate, with something that contained organic matter, it would pull the moisture content out of the organic matter to the surface, which would cause degradation of prill integrity, where it would lose its strength and begins to soften. It would become very difficult to spread. So what we had to do was make some changes in our manufacturing process in order to be able to make those two coexist together. And we have not had any issues with it since May. So if that is indeed what you're happening, RZR Nut, I do not recognize your name. Feel free to shoot me an email, and or you can call us on our business line. Our business line, we've got people in place that are know specifically how to handle this issue, and we would love to get you taken care of. And even if you want to share your name in the chat, by all means, I will probably recognize you because I go through every order individually myself. So please, by all means, let us do whatever it takes to make sure you're happy. When you were using the skid, did you fert through it in addition to herbicides or stick with granular for fert? If yes, what was your basic process to prep the mix? Okay, so back in the day, I used to spray liquid from my skid, and my process was when I would come in the afternoon, I fill my tank, I would dump my soluble fertilizer in the tank, agitate it, let it sit overnight, agitate in the morning, add my herbicides, go spray. So, yeah, and I would mix, say like, I wanted some urea, some ammonium sulfate, and some potassium chloride in there. My plan is to go like a pound of N per 1,000 and a pound of K per 1,000, something like that. So, yeah, I did it that way. But after I got my Permagreen, because one, I could just do more properties in a day with a Permagreen. When I was walking along a 200,000 square foot day, I hurt for 2 days after the fact. With my Permagreen, a 200,000 square foot day, it was 2 o'clock in the afternoon. So I made the switch to the Permagreen, and with that, I made the switch to granular fertilizer because that was how I built my program. Soil Savvy recommended 2100 and 006. Would I be better with a 1616? Probably not, because if they're recommending a 2100, that sounds like ammonium sulfate, which means you have high pH soil. They're not recommending any phosphorus, and they are recommending potassium. So a 1616 is okay, but you would need one phosphorus free. So you would need a 16016. But they're saying you have high pH, so you would have to make sure that the nitrogen in that 16016 is ammoniacal to have the greatest effect on dropping your nitrogen, dropping your soil pH. So, in my opinion, no, a 1616 is not a good substitution on your Soil Savvy recommendation of a 2100 and a 006. Anthony Landis says, is starter fertilizer necessary overseeding when phos levels are already high in the soil? No. Anthony Landis, no. If your soil levels are already adequate when seeding, there's no reason to apply starter fertilizer. You could do something like a humic acid if you're worried about solubility. You could do something like mycorrhizae would be great. Mycorrhizae is known to be able to take phosphates that are bound up by calcium or phosphates that are bound up by iron and letting those fungi work on separating that and making them solubilized for plant uptake. When you own a business, your life becomes your business. Absolutely. Question. I thought I heard you mention that humic can bind your pea. I have X-Start sitting here as well as humic 12. Should I just seed an X-Start or can I put 6 ounces per 1,000 about 2 weeks ahead of my seed? That's a good question. I don't know. So there is a study, and I don't have it in front of me, but the study specifically dealt with the effect that humic acid had on pea, and the effect was that it could potentially precipitate out pea once it made contact with the soil. That being said, I consulted with a bunch of people, and basically I was led down the road that if to ensure maximum solubility of your pea, stick with purely fulvic acid at the time of applying phosphorus. Staying purely fulvic acid would not have any influence on the solubility of pea or contain any chances of freak precipitation of your phosphorus because of the presence of excess or a high concentration of humic acid. So I can't answer that question because I don't know the answer to it, Damon. That is a little bit outside of my level of chemistry. Real Lawn Lady says, need to kill Virginia buttonweed, globe sedge, and Florida puzzle in hot temps and want to ding the Bermuda as little as possible as I'm trying to get it to fill in. Well, unfortunately, when you're dealing with that, yes, you are just going to have to ding it. Because Virginia buttonweed, particularly in Bermuda grass, is difficult to control. I'll tell you what I did, and this may not fit you. I did run fluroxapyr on Bermuda grass, and it hurts Bermuda really bad. I would run, what is it, by Momentum FX2 by Site 1 was typically what I would spray on buttonweed, and that is a mixture of triclopyr and fluroxapyr, both really hard on Bermuda grass, but exceptional in buttonweed control. For globe sedge, I love the idea of running your certainty there. Is Celsius plus certainty enough to knock out both buttonweed and globe sedge? Potentially, but this is what I would challenge you to do, and that is make sure the pH of your tank mix is slightly basic. You want your pH of your tank mix to be above a 7, and I will tell you why. Both Celsius and Certainty contain ALS inhibitors, sulfonylureas. Sulfonylureas are higher in solubility in higher pH solutions than in lower pH solutions or even neutral pH solutions. So what that means is that increased solubility means increased efficacy because it has a better shot of getting into the plant, your target weed. So I like your idea of Celsius plus Certainty. I think that's great. The one thing is that I would make sure you are running a little bit high on the pH of your tank mix. Hey brother, is there a best time in the season to level lawn? Bermuda grass, Central Texas, weather still in mid to high 90s. Yes, Mark, typically I would recommend it before the 4th of July. Could you do it now? Yes. Is it ideal? No. But, it's totally your call. I don't think it would be an issue. I'm torn between pre-emergent or overseed now in New York State. Help me choose. Okay. How many bare spots do you have in your lawn? If you have, say, more than 10% bare spots in your yard, then I would probably overseed. If you have a nice, thick, healthy yard, then I would go ahead and apply pre-emergent. Let's see. Whoa, I jumped down to the bottom. I got to come up a little bit here. Wow, I went entirely too far. Okay, oh, here's Justin Fry. Welcome to the show, good sir. Hey, Matt, new here. Can you talk about fall fertilizing and spoon feeding new lawns, overseeding for cool season lawns? Okay, yeah, Justin. So there is, I want to say it came out of Rutgers. Where is G-Man or OSU Turfman when you need them? But it is called the Fall Nitrogen Blitz. And the idea is that you run at a higher, you put down the overwhelming majority of your fertilizer in the fall to kickstart your next growing season. And so is it necessary to spoon feed cool season lawns in the fall? Not necessarily. You can, so you can run, quarter pound in a week, something like that. But typically with cooler weathers, nitrogen's going to be more stable, so you can actually drop your nitrogen frequency. Now, if you're talking about right now, obviously soil temperatures haven't dropped that much, but if we're talking about October, mid-October, late October, then you can put down like just ammonium sulfate, quick release ammonium sulfate, and it's going to be extremely stable in the soil just because it's cool outside. So remember that the higher the temperatures, the more likely you have for nitrogen loss. The cooler it is outside, the more likely you are to have stable nitrogen that just hangs out in your soil for a longer period of time. What is this benefit to spoon feeding weekly versus throwing a larger amount down monthly, particularly on a grow-in? The advantage is that during a grow-in that you do not typically have the root coverage to be able to pull things out of the soil. So by spoon feeding on a weekly basis, you're not stressing that root system to constantly have to find things. You can apply it through the leaves for enough for the plant to continue to push on. Whereas if you put out a dry material during a grow-in and say it's very, very, very thin, you may not have the developed root system to be able to take it up. Your nitrogen may run too deep before your plants can take it up. The other thing is that how much of a difference are you going to see? Are you going to grow in like 1 foot of bare area extra by spoon feeding versus not spoon feeding? No. It may be like an additional inch or 2, if any. Depending on what kind of products you're actually using there. And that reminds me, Matt Kosinski, I'm going to go ahead and take this time right now and tell everybody, this Thursday, I am going to be doing a very special live stream. I am going to be going live with my friends over at Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance. So Katie and Brandon and Jimmy, we are all going to hop on over there, and we're just going to do just pretty much a simple interview. We're going to talk about seeding. We're going to be talking about X-Start. We're going to be talking about the whole Carbon X, Carbon Earth line of fertilizer products. We're going to be talking about, what not only what to do at time of seeding, but also aftercare, right? So remember, everything is all about the program. It's all about the year. It's all about the season. It's all about not what you're doing now, but what you're doing right now to prepare for what's coming up is always the name of the game. For any of you that have seen the program videos I put out, when I design a program, I'm always doing something now to solve a problem that will be coming up 6 to 8 weeks down the road. Because from a professional perspective, typically the fastest you can be on a property is every 4 weeks, maybe, and typically that gets stretched out to every 6 weeks. So in that time frame, you have to make sure you've got down everything you possibly can to account for the different variables that are going to appear over those 6 weeks. So Katie, Brandon, and myself are going to be talking about that, and that is over at the Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance Show, and that is going to be 12 o'clock September 12th, which would be Tuesday, and we are going to do that at 9:30 p.m. So there we go. Okay, now, where was I? Matt Kosinski said something about Virginia Beach. Okay, is Virginia Beach too southern, hot, humid for Kentucky bluegrass? Probably. I don't know. I would need to look through years of data for me to come up with that determination. But at first guess, I would say, yeah, it's too hot for it. Okay, I'm trying to kill Bermuda and St. Augustine. I have etofumicate and atrazine on hand. Advice, please. I don't have the labels in front of me, so I can't give you the rates, but what I would do is, like, now that it's actively growing, I would go ahead and make applications of both. Again, I don't have the labels memorized, so I'm not going to be able to tell you exactly what rates those are. But I would not be nervous about it. I would go ahead and run whatever label rates are for St. Augustine tolerance with both etofumicate and atrazine. So if it recommends, for St. Augustine grass, apply 1.5 ounces, it's just an arbitrary number. I'm making this number up. Then go ahead and apply 1.5 ounces. Don't cut it down to, 1/2 ounce. Or if you do want to cut it down to 1/2 ounce, you totally can. Just be prepared to make 2 applications to get that 1.5 ounces down, if that makes sense. How much liquid iron with perennial ryegrass? I have a liquid that is 5% iron. Label says 6 ounces per 1,000. So I guess you're just trying for a temporary coloring. It doesn't matter. I mean, just if the label says 6 ounces, run 6 ounces. I mean, that's what I would do. That's plant growth regulator. I would do label rate with plant growth regulator, not perennial ryegrass. Sun99, did you get my answer earlier? I answered your question. Best way to get a wife on board with pumping money into a fescue Kentucky bluegrass lawn until next August and then glide all to mono KBG. Buddy, I wish I could help, but you are toasted. Toasted, you're in trouble. What are my favorite turf-type tall fescue cultivars? Like I said earlier, I like everything from Mountain View Seeds. The ones I have the most experience with that I got to use multiple years were, hang on one second and I will tell you exactly what it is. I have used Avenger 2. I have used Firecracker LS. I have used Dynamite LS. I have used Screamer LS. I have used Spider LS. I have used Stingray before in the past. And I have used Valkyrie LS. I have used all of those. And they are all exceptional turf-type tall fescues. And they all come from Mountain View Seeds. Call these guys. I'm going to give you their information right here in the chat. Call them and tell them Matt Martin, the Grass Factor, sent them. I'm curious. I want to have a conversation with those guys, and it's been a long time since I have. So seriously, tell them I told you to call, and maybe that'll prompt them to have a conversation with me. Let's see here. When can we expect more X-Start? It should be soon. It was kind of one of those things where NA1DU, we were only going to make a certain amount and put it out, and we did, and it all went. And it went faster than what we anticipated. So we've got more raw materials on the way back to us. We're probably going to release like another 50 pallets out there. And then we're for real going to be done with it because we're starting to work on building inventory for the next round that's going to be after seeding, right? So you use X-Start at the time of your seed, and then after seeding, we're going to go back over to Carbon X to really give it that hammer it to it. A nitrogen ass kicking to get those plants as established as much as humanly possible for carbohydrate storage, plant development, plant mass going into winter, because the more developed we can get it this fall, the better off we're going to be next summer. Let's just keep that in mind. Bugs have found zoysia. Oh boy. Kenny Cooper, I appreciate that. And for that, those of you that aren't aware, it is the damnedest thing, and I kid you not. Ryan Knorr gets more hate on YouTube than anybody I have ever seen, and it is the most unfortunate thing because Ryan is probably the sweetest human I've ever talked to, and it infuriates me. And I hate to be that guy, but I absolutely go bonkers when I read someone trying to be mean to Ryan. It just does not make sense. That guy was a bully, and he knew he was being a bully, and he probably has severe issues in his personal life that he needs to address. If he feels like being mean to Ryan is is going to make him that much more satisfied with himself or something. The patches in Georgia look for turtle mealybug. Huge problem down here in South Florida. Turtle mealybug. The other one, too, is hunting billbugs. Hunting billbugs in the transition zone have been a really big problem this year as well. Reading a lot out of Memphis right now. A lot out of Memphis, which is interesting because I was talking to a guy in Memphis earlier this year, and he said, yeah, they've been dealing with more and more hunting billbugs, specifically in Georgia grass. And here this fall, it's just been unbelievable the amount I've been hearing about it. I'm going to do a lawn renovation early spring. I literally only have 2 inches of soil. Below that is dirt and a ton of rocks. If I kill off the grass and add 2 inches of topsoil, would that be enough topsoil? I mean, Dan, yeah, I mean, that's going to give you 4 inches of soil. But you have to remember, dirt is soil, right? So it may be dirt that has rocks in it, but does that mean you can't grow grass in it? No. It means you need to test it and then do the appropriate changes necessary to support grass growth, right? So even if it has horrible tilth and you look at it and it's just off the charts with calcium carbonate, with calcium and magnesium, and that's what's tightened it up into like concrete, it feels like, then you can do something like apply an acid like citric acid and flush those carbonates out of the soil, and then you can use something like humic to agglomerate your soil particles, flocculate your soil particles, and give you a little better tilt to be able to support the health of the grass. So, yes, you can add 2 inches of topsoil, but me being me, I would rather work with what I got there. I don't like topsoil. I like to make my own topsoil by establishing grass on it. And if you're wondering, Dan Blue Ball, I have a video where I say that is purely about making your own topsoil because topsoil is a scam. It's the biggest scam going. Ken Harbison, hey Matt, going to be doing overseed soon using GCI turf seed, and I'm putting down X-Start. Should I reapply X-Start 8 weeks after first application or apply Carbon X to get ready for the winter? I would switch to Carbon X after that point. So the only time you would really need to be doubling up on your X-Start would be, say you get a soil test back that says you've got 3 parts per million of phosphorus in your soil. Well, then that tells me you're going to need 4 pounds of actual P to deplete that level of deficiency. So what you may want to do is put down like 2 pounds of P now and then 2 pounds of P 4 weeks later. And then 4 weeks after that, you can put down your Carbon X. So it still fits that 8-week schedule, right? But if you have a soil test that's only calling for a pound of P, and you applied 4 pounds of nitrogen this year, or you plan on applying 4 pounds of nitrogen this year, then you could support up to 2 pounds of P for your season's worth of phosphorus that you need. Plus, you would exhaust from the soil. Chris Voix, I've got water. I got water. Let's see here. I'm in the transition zone. I've been hand watering 1 hour, 4 times a day max, sometimes 3 times. Trying to hit every inch a little bit. We'll apply more fungicide if you think it's not overwatering. It could be overwatering too. If you've only fertilized once at initial seeding, I would definitely get some fertilizer down, especially on sand. Definitely fert that. Matt, would grubs cause sprigs not to tack down? Yes, they absolutely can. If I had Pythium this year, what should I look for next year to buy a product and receive it about 2-3 days from buying it? Just temps, wetness? That's just it. B-Town's most wanted is that there. Yes, okay. So this is what you're looking for is one wet grass for extended periods of time. So think afternoon rains. That's going to be wet through the evening, and then you got morning dew, and so you may be at a 24, 18-hour period there of really wet grass. So extended wet periods, over 90 during the day and over 70 at night. And I would say 3 days in a row of that, especially, but it could happen even after just 1 day of it. I saw some videos of people using baby shampoo to aerate the soil. Does it really work? It doesn't. Okay, so when traditionally when you're aerating the soil, right, it's all about like reducing bulk density because you're pulling a core, you collect your core, and then you fill in that hole with sand to maintain that open, newly created pore space, right? When you're applying baby shampoo, you're not actually doing that. What you're doing is you're actually capitalizing on the surfactant qualities of baby shampoo. And what that does is that it soaks into the soil, helps water soak into the soil without as much restriction. And by allowing it to move into the soil profile without much restriction, that additional water there can solubilize a lot of nutrients that may not have had access to water because water just purely wasn't penetrating it. Soil that becomes dry for too long can become hydrophobic, where it will repel water. And you can lose a lot of your fertilizer, your fertilizer inputs, because they are no longer solubilized and they're trapped in this area of hydrophobic soil. And so you apply something like baby shampoo, you may see an additional flush because you get more solubilized nutrients plus more water at your root zone available for the plant. Ben Wertherman, the grass factor. My dog eats the grass sometimes. Hope no arsenic in the grass leaves from timbers. We'll take a look at them. Some seem pressure treated, not broke down. Others were breaking down. Man, here's the other thing. I don't want to scare you. I don't think it's going to be arsenic to the point of causing arsenic poisoning. If you're really concerned about it, you could do a test. It's not a heavy metals test. Is not expensive, and you can test for things like arsenic. It's like $30 to $50, and that would give you an idea. So, but remember, we're probably talking about presence in the soil of 1 part per million, maybe even like parts per billion at that point. So, I don't want it to scare you. I'm just saying from an environmentally responsible type of way, I would remove them and discard them off-site. Is there any NIS okay for fungicides? Yes, they are all okay for fungicides if they are a non-ionic surfactant. What is sand capping? Sand capping is when you apply sand to the point of creating a new layer of soil profile. So it's not just top dressing. Well, it is. Basically, it's just top dressing. But you may go a little bit deeper, right? And so things like Bermuda grass can tolerate being buried underneath sand. So you may go 1 inch to even 2 inches of sand on top of a different, whatever your subsurface is. You can sand cap. This is where you'll have soil, and then 2 inches of sand. Any experience with a toe-behind detacher instead of using a push detacher? Thinking of renting one. I have never used one. I've never even seen one, to be honest. Dan the man. Getting ready to overseed customers' lawns soon. Do you have experience with Barenberg seed? What are your thoughts on the coated seed? Velvet Hammer, I have no experience with Barenberg seed other than the bluegrass with HGT technology. Is coated seed worth it? If you have irrigation, in my opinion, no. If you don't have irrigation, yes. It's a tough call. I personally do not like coated seed, but I know there's lots of people that absolutely love it. Ag even loves it to some degree. So I'm not going to be able to give you an answer on it. But for Barenberg, I've only used the HGT bluegrass, and as a genetic, Barenberg is a very reputable seed company. Great seed company. My only issues with HGT bluegrass is just the fact that it's a genetically it is not a very dark green Kentucky bluegrass. I want to level my grass where the timbers are. Soil is clay, heavy and compacted. What should I use to do this? Topsoil, sand, something else? What amendments are recommended? Maybe mixed with humic 12. Really, if you want to break up heavy clay that's compacted, really the only thing I would do is just get something growing on it. getting something growing on it can fix clay soil faster than anything. It's not that clay's bad. It's just you need it to be able to breathe and support gas exchange, right? So if it can support gas exchange, it can support water retention, and it can support plant life. So the goal is just to get something growing on it. So whatever you have to do to get grass established on it, do that. And then once it's there, feed it appropriately, and having something growing on it will fix the clay. Any opinions on starting a Celsius plus Spectacle plus Micros on warm season grasses? Yeah, I've got lots of opinions on it. Celsius plus Spectacle, love the idea of that. Micros right now, not so much. It's you're in the carbohydrate storage phase of the plant. Micronutrients may attempt to, you totally can. Because, in thinking about it, I'm just thinking out loud here. Yeah, you can do micros right now. Do you need to? No, you don't. I don't want to send you down a road of false sense of security there. Just, you don't have to do that. And the reason being is that for doing micros right now, is that a lot of your micronutrients will increase chlorophyll content in the plant. And so when it comes to producing carbohydrates, the higher amount of chlorophyll in the leaf tissue, the more carbohydrates that are generated through photosynthesis. So there's your answer for it. Yeah, there you go. Matt, should I continue my next monthly biostim applications? Should I just apply RGS and Humic 12 during the first 2 months? Flash duck, it's totally up to you, man. It is totally up to you. Neighbor Zoysia Parkway pushed out my tall fescue 100%. Now at 200 square foot of Zoysia. If I start plugging into my main lawn of fescue, will it take over? Yes. Hey, Matt, can I have a bag of Vextart? Yep, you can hop on over to thelawncarenut.com and place your order. Or you can do that at Pete, too, GCITurfAcademy.com. Can anyone answer if tenacity is good with all next products for overseeding, and when should it be applied with the overseeding process? You can apply tenacity with it. Would I? Probably not. 3 lines only. Matt, howdy. Late on the show, but glad to hear what's going on. I appreciate that. Dallas grass is creeping into my Bermudas. MSMA my only hope other than glyphosate for fully killing it? No. In fact, most studies show that MSMA is not, it is effective on it, but 1, it's illegal now, and 2, Celsius plus Revolver is much more effective in controlling Dallas grass than MSMA is. So Celsius plus Revolver, also Tribute Total would be your best options. MSMA is very illegal, and if you do want to do that, remember that you are putting an industry that supports a lot of jobs and a lot of families and a lot of business owners and a lot of guys that have finally found something in their life that afforded them an opportunity, regardless of their educational background, to have success in life. And by choosing to use MSMA and openly talk about it in public, puts their careers, their families, their earnings at jeopardy. The choice is yours. What is a good watering and nutrient cycle for sod? Put about 200 square foot of sod down about a week ago, and it seems puffy, not firm to the ground. Grass is still green and growing, though. If it only went down a week ago, you need to tone down your expectations. Tone it down. You need to give it a month before you even start judging it. What I would do is fertilize it at however you would, okay, so it's sod, so I'd want to go balanced, right? I've never seen your soil test, so this is just a complete total guess, blanket statement here, that, go out with a triple 20 at the time of seeding, and then you can do it every 2 weeks at like a quarter pound to a half pound of nitrogen per application. Give it a month. As far as watering cycle, again, you need to make sure not necessarily that the sod itself is wet, but where the roots are tacking into the soil underneath are wet. Because roots chase water. Roots aren't going around looking for necessarily nitrogen. They're looking for water. So if you get water into your subsurface through your soil profile of your sod into the underlayer of soil, the roots will then drive into it to find more water. So that's how you should adjust your watering. Don't be scared to stress it a little bit either. Matt, on day 8 of dirt to turf reno, I have about 75% germination, turf type tall fescue, Eastern Virginia. Some of the grass is already reaching 2.5 to 3 inches. Hydrotain, aerate, RGS, Scott starter with mesotrione on seeding day. Good work, sir. Oh, question is, when should I make my first cut and when should I put another application and what? So I would switch over to higher nitrogen content, right? Because now I would probably do something with a little bit of potassium in it as well. I don't like fall potassium applications on fescue too late, but you should be good now, and maybe after like October, no longer apply any. But you want to ramp up your nitrogen rates, force those plants to fill out and fill in. So I would go whatever you apply for your nitrogen, I would go ahead and apply that, and go ahead and feel free to make your first cut when it gets to that 3-inch, 4-inch range, somewhere in there. Don't be scared to cut it. Hello, Matt. I am in Waxahachie, Texas. I have Bermuda. When should I do my pre-dormant fertilizer? I don't know what a pre-dormant fertilizer is, and I will tell you right now that with Bermuda grass, there is no such thing. So I would not worry about that. If you want to put down something right now, you could probably put down like a 5025, something like that, with just a little bit of nitrogen to make sure you've got the chlorophyll content in your leaves, like I talked about earlier with the micronutrients, but the main thing being potassium. There is some efficacy data that shows higher amounts of potassium in the plant at the time of going dormant, decreased instances of both spring dead spot and winter kill in Bermuda grass. Oh, man. Let's see here. Matt, when can we expect more egg start? I think we talked about that already. We'll inhibit pea uptake for about 2 weeks until it works through the soil, and then pea will be available for turf uptake. There we go. What is the best solution for doveweed in common Bermuda? I got down close with some ortho ready to use spray. I think the mix of Surflon and quinclorac. No, it would not be that. Probably Celsius is going to be your best bet with your Bermuda grass. I feel like I'm missing something. Somebody was applying something to doveweed, and I cannot recall what it is that they were having such good luck with. I don't know. It may come back to me. I cannot recall right now. I went with the tried and test method of asking for forgiveness instead of permission. I killed it and planted midnight Kentucky bluegrass. I have mostly Kentucky blue KBB mixed with turf type tall fescue and rye. Aerated and put overseeded 2 weeks ago, and I put down 2277. Can I apply X-Start now, or is this overkill? Also, can I mix K-Fight GCF? Man, I have no idea what you're asking. Man, I really don't know. I would not apply X-Start on top of that. I think that would be overkill. But I'm sorry, I really can't understand what you're asking there. I have already put down 2 separate applications of humic acid and kelp and iron and micros. Can I do another round for fall? I have already put down starter fertilizer. Yeah, you can. That is just way overkill, to be honest. I would be focusing more on nitrogen right now instead of humic acid and kelp and iron and micros. Humic acid and kelp, yeah, I get that because you get some root development out of it there. Not a bad choice. but really no reason for iron and micros because any of that phosphorus you applied is now gone. Ryan Nor makes some of the most professional videos on YouTube. Very talented young man. 100%. On baby shampoo for aeration thing, add aerate to it to drive humic and fulvic deep into the soil where humic provides a longer term aeration. Got some Bermuda coming back a couple months after applying sethoxidem. Should I just spray it again? Yeah, I would just spray it again. Be done with it. Temps in the 90s, soil is basically sand. 3 months old, seeded Bermuda shows drought stress quickly. Is watering daily too much? Back down and it struggled. No, watering daily is fine. And it's okay to let it stress. Let it show a little stress because the stress response of the plant is actually a positive thing. Hey, Matt, I have shallow roots and was curious what would be the best way to help root development. Humic acid, aerate? Probably just start with aerating and see how that works. Because if you have shallow roots, the other thing would be to figure out what's causing it. So figure out why the roots will not push into the subsurface. So there's no water getting down there, then you may need to apply a soil penetrant to drive water deeper to encourage those roots to chase it. The other thing may be altering your water program. You have to also remember, too, shallow rooting can't happen this time of year naturally. So roots do like this with tall fescue. In the spring, they go really deep. And then in the summer, late summer, they come really shy. And then they go really deep again in the fall. And then over winter, they come really shallow again. Element R says LD 50 around 13 milligrams kilograms, so probably not an issue with the ppm, pp. Okay, good. Ben, man, what are you doing, man? I appreciate that, dude. Oh, man, that's awesome. Thank you. You really don't have to do that. That's for everybody. Please, you really do not have to do that. Thank you so much. That is just over the top. Lushy, Brandon Reinschmidt, you don't be ridiculous either. I'm not dying. And Brandon, I'm not going to accept your $5 as a prepayment for X-Start. Okay, where am I? I power raked, then scarified, then overseeded. I did not top dress and forgot to rake the seeds, but the seed is sitting straight on the soil. It's a fail, or will it germinate? Juan, it will definitely germinate if it has enough moisture. All the sod I've seen this year has sod webworms. We've been using Duocide in Headway on all new tiles. Installs, I'm guessing. Yeah, lots of sod webworm is out there. What's up, Ugly Weeds, Texas? Toby Howard says, image plus MSM for the doveweed is what you are thinking, maybe. Oh, Toby! I believe you are right, sir. Is that a Green Doc special? The MSM plus image? Robert Butler, what's going on, sir? What's better for lowering pH, aluminum sulfate or elemental sulfur? I would probably go elemental sulfur because aluminum in the soil can be toxic to a plant. Aluminum toxicity is a thing, but usually only in really, really, really low pH issues. So if you're like sub 5, aluminum toxicity can become a thing. So I would probably just stick to elemental sulfur, though. And if you're having a hard time finding either, man, I would hop on the Google train because it is everywhere. It's pretty easy to find. Sulfur, peat moss, too. There he says. That's a good idea. That's right. Peat moss is acidifying. Zoysia, no rain for almost 2 months. Any prep you do for winter, pray for rain. That's really all you could do. When it does begin to rain again, maybe give it a nice balance. If you're in Northwest Georgia, Northwest Georgia, that's not where I was thinking. Yes, that is. I'm thinking Central West Georgia, just West Georgia in general, Columbus area. Columbus had some of the lowest phosphorus levels I'd ever seen. So maybe something like a 10-10-10 before winter, or a 10-5-10, something like that, or a 20-20-20, something like that. Give it a little feeding when you do start to get some rain. Hey, Matt, any thoughts on dormant seeding cool season grasses up in the north? Trimac, I do not have the experience, therefore I will not be able to offer you an answer on that. What's up, Gravy? Look out! I'm getting so sleepy, y'all, but I'm going to keep going. Tomorrow, I'm having aerate, top dress, slit seed, and X start. I got from LCN. They can apply tenacity, but advise against. Lots of folks suggest tenacity. If I do it, should it be at full rate? Yes, it should be at full rate. I don't see anything wrong with tenacity in that application. I mean, yeah, you can certainly do that. Will Surfland hurt cold season grass? I mean, I can't remember. I think it does. No, I think Surfland hurts Bermuda grass, doesn't it? I might be wrong there. Citric acid and sulfur, Doc Special. That's right. If anyone wants to trade a bag of X-Star for carbonate. Damon's got the hustle going in the chat. Look at this. Seeing two things in my lawn. A ton of wolf spiders at night and some tiny moths fly up when I hand water. Spiders are fine by me, but are the moths a problem? Could be, Terry Finch. Those could be your worms, right? So it could be army worms. Could be sod web worms. It could be lots of things. Could be Indian pantry moths. You never know. And I did a video about identifying egg masses, and so you may want to inspect your house, see if you see anything on that. Yeah, there you go. Thoughts on, I'm getting so sleepy, I'm going to have to end this here in just a second. Thoughts on Pete's GCI seed. I have put in some Mountain View seed last fall in my side yard and it has done amazing, even in shade. Thanks and looking forward to finally using Carbonex in Oregon. Austin, I've never looked really at the label of Pete's seed, but this is what I would recommend you do, is you hop on over to ntep.org and look up each individual seed variety and see how it's rated in the latest NTEP trials. Genetics are changing fast. Stay on top of your genetics by researching the genetic research done by the National Turfgrass Evaluation Program. Look for an area that is closest to you or which has the most similar soil types and check out and see what's going on. All right, everybody, I am going to call it for the evening. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in tonight. I had a wonderful time, but the fatigue is setting in, and I've got a really, really long day tomorrow. So thank you so much for tuning in. I truly appreciate it. You guys are awesome. I had a wonderful time. Be sure and hop on over to Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance. Subscribe and hit the bell so you are notified when I am going live on their channel to talk about how to care for your lawn after seeding. So for all of you people that are going to be working with tall fescue out there, hop on over to Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance because we're going to be talking about maintaining turf after seeding and the different products you'll want to use after that. And we may even be talking about some surprise things that are coming up. And I don't want to give away too much there, but we have been, as manufacturers, we were always, my goal as a manufacturer is to always make sure I can put out the best products possible. The best products possible. So I am perpetually searching for the greatest things out on the market that are just above and beyond what is out there. And I can say that we are paying a lot of attention to what is happening with some of the newer genetic research in agriculture that has cross paths with fertilizer. And that sounds crazy, but there are some new things coming in the fertilizer world right now that are mind-blowing. It doesn't even make sense what is happening. And it's been really interesting to be able to catch a bird's eye view of it. The conversations first started at the Specialty Fertilizer Global Summit in New Orleans this winter, was when it was first started talking about, and it's been on this lightning ride of a train ride into trials. And finally, some of those trials have actually started to catch up in North America, because this was not primarily developed in North America because of the logistics of using the source material to develop this. But now manufacturing has started. Manufacturing has started to catch up in the United States. And so it's just really interesting to see how the transition of the fertilizer industry is going to start playing out over the next 5 to 10 years. It's going to look similar, but different players than of the typical tricks we like to see up our sleeves. So anyway, just super interesting deals there. Ugly Weeds, Texas. Are there any publicly traded companies mining humic? That is a great question. I do not think so. I'm pretty sure everybody is just buying off of the mines, right? So you've got North Dakota mines, you've got Canadian mines, and you've got Utah mines and New Mexico mines. So like Living Earth and Mesa Verde are the mines out in New Mexico. I think there's a humic one that has opened up in Utah. All of those are Leonardite shale. They're not actually. That's more of a brown coal. It's not actually truly a Leonardite. Leonardite was actually developed from North Dakota mines. And it is has a little bit different. Is it better than the other? Probably not. No, it's just a little bit different fulvic content to North Dakota material, and then you have the Canadian material, which is also a little bit different too. And so one is humulite, one is leonardite, and then I can't remember what they call New Mexico, but it's not. It's technically not leonardite, but whatever, shale, whatever. So anyway, everybody, thank you for tuning in. Stick around and go check out Picture Perfect Lawn Maintenance. I'll be doing a live show over there, and yeah, we will have a good time. Rich Proto, let me. How much of Carbon X is fast release versus slow? So if you take by the weight of the bag, 50% of it is slow. If you take it by the analysis, about 33% of it is slow. 30% is roughly slow. Because the ammonium sulfate is homogenized with organic matter and biochar. And so that's what creates that unique slow release method on that ammonium sulfate material. And then we blend it up. We add in 50%. We go 50-50. And it will, move it up to a 24% nitrogen, right? And all of that is going to be fast release that we blend in. Can I give you a clue on the new lawn fern? No, other than it's not marketed in the industry right now in turf. It is, but not specifically this. So what I have seen so far is everybody's taking isolated forms of this source material and applying it to achieve one particular plant response. So what's unique about this company and what they've started manufacturing is that they take a larger portion. They take actual clusters of the raw material that's going to consist of 21 different active portions, which are going to affect a much greater rate, a much greater spectrum of physiological responses in the plant. So really, really neat stuff. So anyway, okay, that's got it. It's 10:30. I love all of y'all. I appreciate you tuning in. Y'all have a good evening, and I'm going to send you out with a little bit of tunes from No Copyright Sounds.